Okay, my YouTube people, this is a video of me dropping the transmission back into my 1985 Ironhead Sportster. I believe this transmission and this install is good for quite a few years of Sportsters. I think up into the 90s. I'm not really sure, but if you do know that information, leave it in the comments. Anyway, the first thing I like to do with this is I take off this washer here off of here and just put a little bit of grease on the back side of it, just so it stays on while I'm doing the install. Kind of like glue, if you will. Not much, just enough to hold it there. First thing you have to do is put the shift shaft in. And you can see that spline, that's where the shifter goes. There's a washer that sits up on there like that. And then this end. This shifter shaft comes through this notch right here, like that. And then it sits in here like that. And the twisting motion causes this to rock back and forth to shift your bike. When this shift shaft goes in, it goes in horizontal like that. But if it turns, you wouldn't know it turns. So you need to put a mark on the shaft out here. And I'll show you how I do that. I just get the shaft like this, get it horizontal, and then I put a Sharpie mark at the top like that, so I know where horizontal is once I start installing this. So when you're putting the transmission in, you want to be careful. There's a bearing over on this side where the sprocket goes, and also a seal. You want to be sure that when you go in, you don't do damage to either one. Okay, also note there's an alignment dial here and alignment dial here to help you guide the transmission in. Okay, if you notice, when I installed the transmission, looks like that mark moved. And when you check it, I missed. So I got to pull the trans back out and re-stab that in. Okay. Now I have the transmission in on the alignment dials and the mark is facing up. There's no twist in it because at this point you're pulling against the springs inside, and there's just a little bit of in and out, maybe a 1/4 inch of play in and out. Next you have 4 5/16 18 bolts to hold the transmission in. If you notice, the one here is shorter than the rest of them. That shorter one goes right here, upper right hand side, and these get torqued 14 to 19 foot-pounds. I'm going to put Loctite on all 4 of these. There they are with the Loctite. Use blue. Okay, I have the bolts snugged in, they're not torqued. It's important that you check to make sure the transmission's shifting properly right now. So one of the things you might have to do is hold the shaft on the other side, and I'm holding that output shaft and spinning the input shaft, and it's in neutral. So I go 1 click down, and that's first gear, and you heard it click in. And now with holding that shaft, I can feel it spinning. Now go to second. Second, third, fourth, and then shift back. Third, second, first, neutral. So when you're shifting it and you're spinning it, it's good to put a little bit of resistance on the output shaft because those gears still have to line up. Now I'll torque the bolts. I'm going to come up on this torque. This is 7 foot-pounds to start with. And since it's 14 to 19, I'm going to come in at 17. I always like to go around a second time. Sometimes bolts can loosen up if things aren't straight. Okay, now the transmission's torqued in. Next thing I'm going to do is put the stator back on. I have the 4 stator bolts, and I'm going to Loctite those with blue Loctite. These take a T25 Torx bit. Again, when I'm snugging them up, I like to snug all 4 corners. And then you can start torquing them. I'm torquing these to 70 inch-pounds. And now 90 inch-pounds. Now I go around a second time. You can see that one loosened up a little bit. And that was a third time. You want to keep going around until none of them are moving. Next, while I'm at this point, I'm going to use my 3/8 Allen socket and put the drain plug back in. I have a new O-ring on that. Next, I'm going to install the primary chain tensioner. Now, you can see this has a line on it, and that's where this spring goes like this. So it goes spring on, shoe, spring, and then you just get it up on there like that. Next thing you want to do is put your primary chain sprocket and clutch hub on. But before you do that, since you need to use red Loctite on this, you want to clean the threads real good with brake clean. And it goes on that simple. Next, I'm going to put some red Loctite on these threads here. And then I'll torque the nut on. Okay, over on the clutch basket side, it doesn't get any bolt or nut. The first thing you do is you have this washer and you put it over the shaft. And then this smaller snap ring. You have a smaller and a bigger. It's the smaller snap ring next. Want to make sure to take your time and make sure that snap ring is sitting behind the splines in the groove. Next thing that goes on is the clutch disengagement stud with the bearing. That goes in with the stud facing out. You have to get it all the way down because this snap ring goes in next. You have to get this piece all the way in because this inner snap ring goes in next. Okay, the first thing you do is you put this piece in here with the ramps facing up. And you put the balls in it. This triangular piece goes in, and that centers it. Then the locking tab. And the 3 bolts that go in, and I use plenty of blue Loctite on these, even though you have locking tabs, just to make sure. Like to make sure it's centered, it's all free. And then you torque them back down. Now you bend the locking tabs back over. Now this can be installed. Next thing you have to put on is your new gasket. I use James. This is JGI 34955-75-X. Make sure to get it over your 3 dowels. 1, 2, 3. Now the washers are on, and you slide your cover over it all. Now you put your case bolts in. Next, I'd like to torque the case bolts up. They get torqued to 90 inch-pounds. I'm going to come up to 40 first. Next, I torque them to 70 inch-pounds. And last, I torque them to 95. Next, you put this locking nut on this stud down here, and this stud holds the spring for the chain tensioner shoe. Next, I'm going to put the primary chain adjustment screw in, and that comes up through the bottom. So your adjustment on the primary chain is 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch. The way I do that is I take it here, touching it, come up, and measure it. And now you lock it down. Next thing is to install the clutch adjuster. This one goes on first, and it goes down through that hole. You have to hold the adjustment screw to get it on. You just turn the adjustment screw and it pulls it right in. Then once you get it to where you want to adjust it, you put this locking screw on. The hex goes in and it locks on that and then holds it in place. But before you can do that, you have to hook up the clutch cable to the clutch. Okay, now I have adjusted. Just slide this on, line it up with the hex behind it. It locks it in place. Then it gets this spring to hold it back there, and then the cover nut with a new O-ring. Next, you put the foot peg on, then the lock washer. I'm going to put some blue Loctite on that, and then the lock nut. Next, I'm going to put the rubber washer on and then the shifter. The next thing I'm going to do is fill the primary and the transmission with this RevTech gear and chain lube for Sportsters. The book says it takes 24 ounces. Now I'm going to put the cover on. Last thing I have to do is put the sprocket back on. I'm going to make sure to put that on with red Loctite. Now some red Loctite and the nut. And now the locking Allen, and I make sure to cover it with blue Loctite. And now we'll get the cover on. I didn't show it, but I did put the exhaust back on. Also there's a bolt under here I didn't show. Got installed. Just got done taking it out for a ride, and it is running excellent. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great day.